here we go. We've got the guys from Splattercast. How are you guys doing this evening?
Dylan is unprepared as usual over there messing with his action.
I cannot help myself. I gotta play with my toys every opportunity I get. It's hard being an adult out here. No, I just realized I have like a bunch of Thanksgiving merch and I didn't put it out beforehand, so that's my bad.
Oh, no worries at all.
He's got a turkey over there.
Yeah, Luke and I can talk while you set up all your stuff and.
Well, yeah, this is what we'll do. Davey and I will talk, and then Dylan, you can play with the action figures in the middle of us, and we'll do that for like an hour.
Always works
there
for
you
me,
go.
Man. Always works for me. I'm down. But what is up? What is happening?
Nothing much, we're already, cruising through November. It feels like I needed a little bit of a breather after October. I'm sure you guys can definitely feel that as well. And then here we are. We're already in the home stretch of November as soon as I, look back up and realize, holy crap, the world's still moving. But yeah, how about you guys? How's everything been going since the craziness that was October?
It's been interesting. I mean, we've just kind of been trying to recover a little bit, certainly just trying to give ourselves like a little bit of a breather. We've got a lot of stuff that like we were just on top of everything pretty much in October. We had nothing but screeners, reviews on top of the content we were doing ourselves. And yeah, I mean, it was just a really, really big month for the channel. I'd say so, Luke. I mean, we had a goal. I think didn't we start at 7K subs in September? And then literally we crushed that goal in like 2 weeks into October. Wow. And because we wanted to be at 10 by the end of October if possible. And it was just absolutely mind blowing. So very
you guys have like doubled from there at this point.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
It's one of those things where once it starts catching, you just watch the numbers rise. It's the hardest thing is getting there. And for us, honestly, it's one of those things where we always tell ourselves, oh, well, summer's going to be a slow month. And then the screeners start rolling in. And it's like, oh, well, now we have this, we have that, we have that. And then we're into October. And then in December, we do the last is it 12 days? I think we do 12 days. I always forget. It's December to Dismember. So it's like we always do this Splatterathon. We have a little bit of a break in November, kind of, but not really. Yeah. And then we're gearing up for December to Dismember again, and that takes us into the new year. So it's one of those things where it just never stops. As a content creator, you're always rolling, trying to find out the next thing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, every day that you're not creating, you feel like you're kind of getting behind, a little bit. It's one of those. You're like, oh shit, I've just lost some time. Now I'm behind the curve on everything. Now, how long have you guys been doing this?
We're just past the 2-year mark in May. So yeah, we're getting close to 3. May will be 3. And it's been pretty good, I gotta say. I mean, we didn't expect to be this far into it, even at almost 3 years. Like, we pretty much just started this whole thing by saying, hey, we're gonna just do this for fun, because we did a podcast way back in the day called By Admission Only, and a very, very early iteration of Splattercast that didn't really advertise, didn't push it at all. We just kind of threw it up and said, hey, there it is. And then, things just took off this time around. We got a little bit of traction off of a couple of people watching our stuff, and, suddenly we got the motivation, and we just said, hey, let's keep chasing this. Let's see what we do. And yeah, it's just been kind of a lot of trying to find our niche, find our groove. And I think we finally found that this year. So it feels good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I noticed, once I started following along, a whole bunch of Terrifier coverage, of course, and so I'm curious to know, like, what for each one of you guys, how did you find your way to horror? I'm sure everybody asks you that, but you could give me the most abridged version if you want. And then, how has that journey kind of changed as you've been a content creator? And, now we've got that whole brand new wave of things like Terrifier that are just taking the horror world by storm.
Luke, you can start with this one, man. You're way better at this part than I am.
Oh, well, thank you. Now, for me, growing up, horror was never something that was kept from me. So I had been introduced to a lot of the usual suspects really early on. I remember seeing the ending of Friday the 13th, the final chapter on television, Corey Feldman stepping over Jason, and that instantly captivated me. So I had to go out and get the VHS. from the video
Yeah.
store at the time, and my mom was more than accommodating, because that stuff was we had
Mhm.
that kind of hard line of this is make believe and
Yeah.
it's not real life. So I had that clear understanding because I'm also a big pro wrestling fan. So I kind of had
Mm.
to have those lines drawn really early on. So it was really something that, you it's such an interesting feeling to feel scared while you're watching something. It almost becomes addicting, I think. So,
Yeah.
going into it, even probably into the mid 2000s, I was really, just watching the basic stuff. I had an understanding. I eventually found Adam Green's Hatchet, and then that started, I was uncovering a lot of stuff that you don't usually see. And then as we
Mhm.
started the channel, I had never seen the original Terrifier, honestly. That was something that Dylan and I had both had to cover for the channel to say, Terrifier 2 is coming out. So we got
Yeah.
that, and then I was never a big found footage fan. And over the past 2 years, I became a really big found footage fan with some of the screeners that we've gotten. So I've been able to check a lot of boxes, and honestly, the channel being, almost assigning yourself homework, where it's
Yeah.
like, I have to watch this that I wouldn't have watched any other time. So I think that's rather interesting because you're able to kind of check all those boxes in your horror compendium or whatever you want to call it and say, I've
Yeah.
never seen this, but now I have to watch it. So the channel really gave me that push to really check a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that for me, my journey really started just as a kid with like creature features. I think like I watched Jaws growing up a lot. That was kind of
Mhm.
my big one. And then, I did all the Spielberg kid stuff. I watched Indiana
Mhm.
Jones, Star Wars, all that stuff. Wanted to make movies from a young age. But really, my love for horror started to, I guess, crest into the more traditional slasher stuff after I saw the remake of Friday the 13th. My cousin
Mhm.
had seen it for a birthday party that he went to, and they went to the theater. And then that summer it comes out, and he's like, "Hey, dude, like this movie is fucking awesome. You got to check it out." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll see it. It's kind of scary." And I
Mhm.
watched it, and I was just hooked. I would come home and I'd watch these channels. Funny enough, mostly about horror merch, so like figures and things like that, because I've always been a big collector, and
Gotcha.
that kind of started the interest in learning more about some of these classic characters and things. And it just kind of spurred off from there. I would start to go watch all kinds of stuff. Not really much into I thought I knew what indie horror was because I watched A24 and Neon and stuff. But
Yeah.
like Luke, once we started this channel, I mean, it was more, I guess, as shitty as this is going to sound, I think at the start of it, it was more content motivated because we were like, well, not many people are going to cover this movie. So if we cover it, then,
Mm.
it'll give us better chance to boost up. But we just fell so hard for a lot of the independent outlets and a lot of the independent movies that we get to watch. And it just kind of became our bread and butter after a while, where it's just like, I just want to see as much of like the smaller films. Like I get more excited about like independent films now, like
Mm.
little stuff that goes straight to VOD, than I do half of the stuff that comes out in theaters anymore. Like I'm still excited for Nosferatu. I'm still excited for Alien Romulus and stuff, but like,
Yeah.
man, hearing about like what your show is based, Late Night with the Devil, like we were trying
Yeah.
so hard to get a screener for that for ages. We finally acquired one, and that was like just a day. I was so pumped for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like 2024 has been a really good year for like a little bit of everything, As far as horror goes, like I think there's something for everyone here. It's been a pretty good variety for sure. Whether it's like the more poppy stuff like or accessible stuff like Alien Romulus, or if it's something strange like Long Legs, or kind of like a party like Abigail was kind of like that, had that. Well, to me, it kind of reminded me of House on Haunted Hill from 1999. A little bit of that kind of vibe going on. Yeah, it's been a really good year for horror, and yeah, that's really cool that you guys both have a little bit of a different story and a different kind of path to find your way to horror. But yeah, it's what's really like pumps me up hearing your guys' story is just how excited you guys are for like the smaller stuff. So what is on your radar now for the rest of the year that maybe even like somebody like me doesn't even know about? Like what should I be watching, or what's coming up that I need to be watching that I don't know anything about?
Right now, I'm sure you probably know a little bit about it, but I'm going to go with Werewolves from Stephen C. Miller. my God, you know, we're under embargo, but we've seen it, and
all right,
it's exciting. It's going to be a very, very fun time. If you had fun with Abigail, it's like going to be that, but with werewolves. It's going to be an awesome, kick-ass time at the theater.
Right.
And you know, closing it at the end of the year, I don't think, other than Nosferatu, I think that's probably the biggest release. In terms of smaller releases, I don't think we really have anything on the docket. Yeah, so, but honestly, one of the things that we've been able to see, we have a review up on the channel of the remainder episodes of the Creep tapes. And absolutely, I had not revisited Creep in a very long time. So this was a real big refresher for me. And we had all 6 episodes. I watched them one after the other after the other. That hooks you. It's such a weird story. It's got that weird comedy to it, and that perfect mix of horror. It's just something that you'll wish you had all 6 right there, you know. So it's like, if you've only seen the first 2, easily tune in, check out the rest of them, because it's not going to disappoint. But overall, looking at the year, it's been interesting because Dylan and I, we do that like everyone does, where top 10 of the year at the end, you know. So I had the wise idea of making a list from the very start of January, and now we're here in November, and it's been so fun to watch my top 10 change, where something that was number 8 is now number 20 because everything has been pushed so far. So many fun films that have been out, and Dylan and I talk about it on the channel all the time. This year, Shudder has been killing it with its releases.
Dude, absolutely.
There is so much on there. That's something where if you go through there, man, there's so many Shudder films on my top 20 this year that if you subscribe for a month, you're going to be hooked just because there's one. And we're not shilling or anything like that. It's just
we're not sponsored.
Not at all. It's just one of those things where there is a lot of great stuff on there. It's really surprising this year.
Yeah, it's been a damn good one for sure. It seems like there's so many that I'm gonna have to play a little bit of catch up, because there was no way I was gonna be able to go and see every single horror that came out when it was out in the theater. So there's some that I just had to kind of be picky and choosy about it all. There we go. Robert the Wolfman obviously can't fucking wait for werewolves.
Rightfully so.
It's something else, man.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Nice.
Yeah, Street Trash, that's another one I keep forgetting. That one's on VOD now, but it won't be on Screenbox until next month. So yeah, that was another one. We had some fun with that. We differed on that one a little bit, which is kind of rare for us, because usually I wouldn't say that Luke and I have the exact same taste, but we definitely coincide with a lot of things. We share a lot of opinions. But yeah, a stop motion, very good tie. Yes, absolutely. There was one, I always screw up the title, but Davey, I'm going to recommend that you check out, what was it? Was it, They Were Never, no, that's the Joaquin
You'll Never
Phoenix
Find
movie.
Me?
You'll Never Find Me, yes.
Exceptional dialogue. That one.
You'll Never Find Me.
It's a small setting. It takes place primarily in a trailer. It's just 2 characters discussing, and there's like a scene, I think it's with over a chessboard, that enthralled me. And I know it doesn't sound enthralling, but the way that the dialogue is delivered and their choices, it's something I recommend highly everyone checks out.
It's like one of my favorite slow burns from the year. Like, it's one of those ones where it's like, it's extremely slow, but it never feels like it never feels bad. It never feels like it's dragging. Everything just feels like there's tension ratcheting around every corner. It's not a very long movie, but like Luke said, the dialogue is just perfection.
Yeah, I really dig a slow burn. Like, for me, it's just kind of like, what best serves the kind of story they're trying to tell. Is there still like tension throughout? I think like that one of the things that I really loved about Long Legs was that every scene was tense. Like, regardless, it just had that kind of feel. They captured that. And then even something like Late Night with the Devil, that, I think one of the, unfortunate things about that movie is it came out like, what, 2 or 3 weeks on, it was on Shudder like 2 or 3 weeks after it hit the theater. So I think a whole bunch of people were like, I'm just going to wait and watch it on Shudder. They heard that everyone was like, oh my God, I love this movie. And then by the time they watched it at home, distracted by everything at home, they're like, I thought it was okay. But I thought that movie had a lot of tension, even though, a lot of people were like, it wasn't scary. And it's like, well, I'm probably not really going to be scared at a lot of movies, but I just want it to I want to feel like I'm getting sucked in. And it seems like You'll Never Find Me is the type of movie that'll suck you in. If it's got a tension-filled chess scene, then I'm guessing.
Checkmate.
Oh yeah, no, it's excellent. It's definitely one of those ones. Also, it's Australian horror, which is another subsect that we tend to dive into more often than I think we realize. Like, we are big Australian horror fans. Whatever they're doing with the water down there, man, like the people just know how to make really solid horror movies down there. And Australia, it's lots of good stuff, lots of really good stuff.
Hell yeah. And yeah, I mean, speaking of good stuff, and the main topic of our discussion, we are celebrating we just hit the year mark, I believe, of Eli Roth's Thanksgiving from 2023, which I feel like, I don't think most people are like lukewarm on it, but I feel like I'm really hot on this movie. I'm not the biggest fan necessarily of Eli Roth's other works, and not that I think they're bad or anything. It's just that, like, this is my bread and butter. Like, the whodunit revenge, like, love letter to slashers was just something I was like waiting for somebody to put something out like this. So it'll be really fun to chat about that, and chat with you guys about the trailer from 07. But real quick, I'm guessing you guys are pretty jazzed on Thanksgiving as well, if you're willing to talk about all this with me.
It's all right, it's fine, I guess. I wouldn't say it was like my number one of the year or anything. This is pretty garbage. No, I'm kidding. It was definitely up there for us. I mean, that was a night for us too, because we had just started transitioning from just getting like at home screeners to actually going to physical screenings in our area. And one of the people who runs that side of it, who runs for, I think it was Sony who put this out, they were at least in partnership with it. They work with one of the distributors up here we're in Cleveland, Ohio, and she was like, hey, do you guys want to give tickets away for this and like kind of see if you can get some people to show up to the screening? It's always great for us. And it was awesome because there's a local horror group on Facebook here, but they always do like get-togethers. The Akron Horror Hounds is what they're called. Nice. They're awesome people. And we work with the person who started it, and she was able to get like, God, what was it like? Wasn't it like 15 to 20 people?
Yeah,
it was like 3 rows. Yeah, so like we had a whole crew of people show up to the screening, and it was just a huge success. So the energy, the vibes, it was all perfect for us. So I don't know, walking out of that movie, I was pretty blown away. And I contribute a lot of it to that night, but even rewatching it, man, like, this is just I think I called it horror comfort food when it came out, and that's exactly what this still is to me.
And Eli Roth, I'm kind of in the middle, where some of his films I enjoy, a handful of them are misses for me, but rewatchability, I can't say that I always go back and rewatch Eli Roth films, even no matter how much I like them. But Thanksgiving was different, and like Dylan said, the initial experience that we had there was nothing that was going to beat that, because it was so many people were there because we were, getting tickets out and everything like that. They did like a big group photo, everything like that. So it was just a lot of fun that night. There was just something in the air. There's a few of those experiences that we've had that have since starting the channel that are just, you can't trade them for the world, or you never would have guessed that two guys buying microphones and talking about horror films have the opportunity to do. But walking out of that theater, that is easily the most rewatchable Eli Roth film for me, just because it is a lot of fun. It is that horror comfort food that we've all been looking for, and it is so reminiscent of the 80s. Dylan and I had talked about like My Bloody Valentine. That was so reminiscent of what we wanted in a film like that. And it's got, I have a very volatile relationship with comedy and horror. A lot of the times it does not work for me, but the way that they were able to kind of meld that together and solve that equation for me, I was just so excited. Walking out of the theater, I told Dylan, I was like, this has to be released within the next month or two, because I have to watch this one again. So
yeah,
I've revisited it a handful of times since it's been out on Blu-ray, just because it's such a digestible film. You can turn this one on, go in and out throughout your day, and then come back to some of the fun scenes, or rewind if you need to and check it out again. it is just so much fun. And that's where, when it was on my top 10, it was like, it's not, you know, the best constructed film of the year or anything like that, but nothing beats just that love letter that we wanted, and really checking all those boxes of just great slasher films from the 80s.
And I was,
yeah, it was.
I was
go ahead,
going to
Dylan.
say, I was telling Davey over text, I had just acquired this, so this was my first time watching it on 4K, and then I recently also picked up Krampus, so I got my 2 holiday horror films back to back here. I'm going to be checking these out. I will be watching Thanksgiving once again, probably on Thanksgiving. I just, it's one of those ones that just endlessly rewatchable for me.
Yeah, I walked out of it buzzing. Like, I don't know if I had been buzzing on a movie, like a horror movie like that, since I saw Dawn of the Dead 04 in the theater, like on opening night. That was one of those, like, you know, didn't expect it to be like, when Dawn of the Dead was announced, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're making Dawn of the Dead. Like, this is going to be trouble. I was like 20 years old when they announced it. I had just turned, I was like 22 by the time it came out or whatever. And I walked out of that theater thinking I couldn't have been more wrong. And, you know, not like similarly to Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, but, you know, seeing that he was finally doing a slasher that looked to me like, oh my God, it's like it's like teaching a master class in, hey guys, this is how, like, I'm Eli Roth and I'm going to teach you how to make a slasher that has all the trappings and tenets that you want and still has a few surprises and has a lot of fun. Like you guys said, My Bloody Valentine, yes. I get a little bit of the Prowler in there, which I really enjoy as well. And I think what's really cool too is that in the sequel, you know, provided that they bring back the killer, it'll be really cool because we won't have the whodunit aspect. So it'll be able to be a different kind of slasher movie. You know, it'll be like, I think that could have a fun little tilt on it. Whereas Scream is always a whodunit, or Halloween and, you know, Friday the 13th is always the slasher that you know and love. You know, it'll be really cool to see. I think they have the opportunity to do a trilogy here where each movie is kind of a different kind of slasher in a sense.
Yeah, it's kind of teeing itself up, and I know this might get into some hot water if you have a lot of diehard Scream 5 and 6 fans here, but it's kind of teeing itself up to almost be like the anti-Scream in a sense, where it does have the whodunit elements of Scream, but you're right. Going into it, it's going to be interesting seeing, like, who, now that we know who the killer is, what does this mean? Are they going to bring in, you know, a cohort? Is there going to be somebody else who joins them? That could also be something that we play with, but I'm just excited to see, after seeing what they did with the first one, what, you know, Eli Roth has in store for us. Because you're right, I think he hit everything on the head. It was a masterclass on how to make a slasher that not only feels fresh and fun, but also has that nice balance of nostalgia and everything that we love about 80s slashers. And I think the best thing about this is, like, the reason, like, I think Luke and I compare this so much to My Bloody Valentine is because it really feels like it does a lot of intentional things with, like, the love triangle and stuff. But I think the best part about it is, like, My Bloody Valentine from the 80s never got a sequel. And we've always, Luke and I have said for years, like, we wanted a couple of these in the 80s. A few of these. And I mean, the remake is fun. I enjoy it, actually. But could you imagine seeing what would happen with Harry Warden, you know, his one-armed guy walking around?
One-armed Harry Warden, yeah,
just now, like, it's like, is he a ghost? Is he really alive? Is he dead? You know, it's awesome. I would have loved it.
It
would have been.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Luke.
No, Davey, you go. This is your show.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say that I like that even though they capture that 80s feel, it's still modern, of course, and everything. But I think one of the big things too that even, you know, oozes a bit of that My Bloody Valentine feel is the friend group. They really feel like friends. They picked a bunch of really charming, you know, unassuming, don't have to force it kind of performers. I had no idea who Addison Rae was until I saw this movie, and then everyone was like, oh, that TikTok girl or whatever, and I was like, I'm so friggin' old and out of touch with all that stuff that I was like, oh, well, good for her, because she's really charming in there. And I think, you know, one of the cool things is they're going to be able to bring back a lot of those people. A lot of people survived the first Thanksgiving, even though there's a ton of, you know, there's definitely a bloodbath. So it'll be fun. We'll get to see some of those characters that we've grown to know and love, or not love so much, get killed in the sequel. So,
I'm glad
can't
Scuba
ask for more.
survived. I didn't want Scuba to die at all. Like once their friends get abducted, it's kind of one of those things where it's like he steps up in a big way, and I'm like, damn,
yeah,
I love this guy.
Yeah. Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, and like every time they paired off or whatever, all the different interactions. I mean, I think the opening scene kind of gives you that. It puts you right there when they're all, saying what's up to each other in the car. I'm like, that's exactly how it. Like when I look back to my ridiculous high school memories or whatever, I'm like, oh, it's not like my friends and I were just like that, but I can totally see like this feels very natural, So I'm glad they're taking. I'm glad that Eli and his writing partner are taking time to, not push this one out too quick, and that we're gonna get a much more quality movie next year because of it. And man, 2024 just would have been too jam packed with the Thanksgiving sequel. So thank goodness they didn't do that.
Absolutely. I think it would have been too much to have Terrifier 3 and then go right into Thanksgiving. It would have been a lot. I mean, I would have loved it, but damn, it would have been on fun.
Once Terrifier 3 like picks their date, it's sort of like, all right, now everyone's got to spread out and just clear the floor, because that's a crazy dance off that you're just not going to win. Now, comparing the Thanksgiving, the film, the final version of the film that we got here last year, and then comparing it to that 2007 Grindhouse trailer. I remember after the film came out, like one of the things I was seeing online, and I even heard it. I was lucky enough to go to a screening for this one. It was one of the first screenings I ever went to with Cecil from the Horror Show channel, and I was just like smiling ear to ear on the way out. I was probably a bit too boisterous, but I even heard people that outside the screening being like, "Man, I just wish it were more like like that it had that 70s 80s kind of like VHS look and feel, and that it brought everything that we saw in that Grindhouse trailer to life versus the modernized version of it that we got." How do you guys feel about that Grindhouse trailer, and do you think that would have been, I mean, that's another added risk, I guess, that you got to take if you're going to do something that literally does look old and, for lack of a better word, crappy. What do you guys think about that?
Luke, I'll pass it off to you first for this one.
For me, I always loved the Grindhouse trailers. I think that the films are great. I always went back to rewatch those trailers just because I like that aesthetic. I like that feel to it. And I really think it just kind of depends on your approach, really. I think looking at the aesthetic from the original trailer, I don't think it really had that appeal to a general audience. I think a lot of people can say that that's what they wanted. It's because you didn't get it. So you're always going to look at something that you did not get and say, that could have been better. And I do agree. I think, that could have been an interesting take. Now, would it have been as rewatchable? Would I be sitting here saying, it's so digestible, it's something that I turn on if it had that aesthetic and it had that approach? I don't think I would have. I think it would have been a bit of a heavier watch for me in terms of just that aesthetic and the tone that they were going to go for in the trailer. I think it would have been semi-fun, but not as fun as the aesthetic that we got in 2023 for the actual feature. So for me, I'm happy with the version that we did get. I think I probably would have compared that version of Thanksgiving if we had gotten what the trailer was presented, kind of like Joe Bagos's Christmas Bloody Christmas. It probably would have had that feel to it. And I love that film. I only go back to that one around Christmas, usually. So I don't think it would have had that kind of mass appeal if we did do that. So I'm really happy with what we got. I think there would have been enough gas in the tank to get you through with that original concept. I just don't think a lot of people would have been as intrigued to go see it, because at least when I walked out of the theater seeing Thanksgiving, and we saw it a little bit earlier than what a lot of people did, after people that I know had went and saw Thanksgiving when it was in the theater, a lot of people were really jazzed about it. They were excited about it, and they were eager to see it again. So I think the play that we got was the smart play. But I would have been intrigued to see what we would have done. Being a horror fan, I think a lot of horror fans deep in the space would have been like, I would have been rather intrigued to see that. So I'm happy with the version we get. I would have been intrigued to see what they would have done with that aesthetic, but I am really happy with the 2023 version.
I am really subscribe to the idea of this. I saw this on Twitter, I think, and I said it a bunch when we were reviewing the film and gearing up for it and all the trailers. But I really subscribe to the idea of this being like the modern remake of that trailer, being like if it was the 80s version that we never got, or it's like a lost tape to time or something. You know, and I think that's just so fun because we get that so often now. And it really does add another layer of just excitement to this for me. But on the whole, I am happy enough with what we got here. I think that I understand that they felt like this concept was strong enough to make this for more than just us horror fans. Because it's like, we're not to be selfish, you know, we love our stuff. I would have been head over heels in love with this had they went for the grimy, grainy aesthetic of that original trailer, and they really leaned into all of the tropey stuff. I would have had a blast with it. Like Luke said, the Joe Bago style Christmas, Bloody Christmas, absolutely would have been head over heels for it. But the fact that they said we're going to take this serious enough to make this not only a love letter to horror fans, but really try to draw people in, that new Scream audience and everybody else. I think that was the best approach, because now John Carver just doesn't have to live in the, you know, annals of like a Victor Crowley or Sam from Trick or Treat, where it's like he's, you know, something that people who watch horror movies know him by name. I always forget him, but the Leslie Vernon, you know, names like that. Now John Carver has a chance to actually, in a couple of movies, start to become a ghost face, start to become like somebody who's like, oh, everybody recognizes him, and he can be an icon now, especially with Art the Clown paving the way for a new set of, you know, horror icons. He really has a true shot at being iconic, and I think this is the best foot they could have put forward.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Like, I think that it would have been like a fun kind of like as a lark, you know, having it be that 80s gritty version. But yeah, I think that, you know, probably the first thing the studio said is like, well, you're going to set it in modern times. That's probably you know, I would just imagine for money, for budget purposes and all that stuff. And yeah, for accessibility, right? They're like, we want people to actually want to see this, not just the, you know, not just the trolliest of horror fans to want to watch this one. And yeah, I wonder if the fact like Terrifier, you know, carving out its space, you know, sort of made them, you know, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that would bolster your want to like make it gritty and grimy like that. Or there could be the opposite effect where they're like, oh, we don't want to seem like we're sort of like horning in on the Terrifier thing. Cause it seems like based on what the trailer looked like that it probably would have been, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of like shockingly grotesque moments in the final version of the film. But it's nowhere near that Terrifier status, whereas it seems like the Grindhouse trailer probably would have been closer to that. So I wonder about that too, just like, you know, the artist's approach as far as like not wanting to seem like you're riding the coattails or copying someone or whatever.
Yeah, you know, I think about that too, and I think that for the most part, I don't necessarily know if it was that. I think it comes more to what you said first, where it's just like, yeah, the studio is like, if we're going to let you make this, then you're going to have to do it modern, especially knowing the studio that they're going through and how they handle like Scream and everything. It's kind of like they are really trying to target a modern day slasher audience. You know, they're not like a Screambox or a Cineverse who are willing to let people make movies like Terrifier or Street Trash and really go for that. And you know, I think that the thing is like, yeah, I definitely think that it could have been interesting to see it go a little harder, a little bit more gritty. But also, I think we got to think about the times that trailer was made in, and like the movies that they were playing in front of. I mean, they were really trying hard with the Grindhouse movies to emulate, you know, like 80s Grindhouse horror, and like things that you go to the drive-in and see for one weekend, and then maybe you never see it again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I love both those movies. I think that Death Proof is the most underrated Tarantino film there is. I think that movie has just grown on me more and more every time I watch it. Stuntman Mike is one of my favorite horror characters. Love him to death. And I just spoke about Planet Terror this week on my disgusting horror movies list, because that movie is just such an homage to zombie, like Return of the Living Dead horror. And you know, I love them. I love them both, and I think those trailers that they put in front of it are perfect. And you know, to not keep this super long-winded, but I've been thinking about this all week. We did see a little bit of this. We saw a little bit of what these movies would look like had they stayed to their aesthetic with Machete and Hobo with a shotgun. And we saw how those performed. So I think maybe taking this one, which had a little bit more push to it, and going the other way, I don't think it was a bad call at all. I think that they really made the best decision they could have done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it's great. Like the batting average of those fake trailers is pretty good, because 3 out of 5 of them have been turned into movies so far. The SS, what is it? What is it called?
Women of the SS.
Werewolf Women of the SS. That one cracks me up because it almost reminds me of like a Roger Corman, like Big Bad Mama kind of movie. Meets, you know, definitely something more on the horror sphere. But yeah, that kind of like sexploitation era, which is perfect for Rob Zombie. And I actually, you know, the trailer for that Don't movie, I think the trailer, like at the end when they just keep on saying don't, I'm like, okay. Like, I get it. You're trying to make me laugh. But honestly, I'm like, that movie looks like kind of interesting. You know, I thought that Edgar Wright, you know, kind of the take on the haunted mansion, you know, European haunted mansion movie would be pretty interesting too.
100%. And I want to pass this over to Luke too, because we debated about this a little bit, I think yesterday, or was it Monday, where we were talking about trailers. I would love to see Rob Zombie do Werewolf Women of the SS. Luke, not so much. So it was very funny.
Yeah, and I mean, I was being feisty, Dylan, but you know, again, Rob Zombie's one of those filmmakers where I find him to be such an interesting person, but film-wise, his stuff does not necessarily resonate with me. Now, we're suckers for werewolves on the channel, so any actual werewolf content that we get, we're always down to check out. I don't know how well that one would be pulled off, though, just because of usually Rob Zombie's takes. They're an acquired taste. So yeah, that one I'm not necessarily as intrigued by. I think Don't could be rather interesting if it was told more so from like an anthology perspective. It was like don't ... go in the basement, don't whatever.
Sure.
And kind of just do these smaller stories with that Edgar Wright tone to it. I think could be rather interesting. But, you know, I'm not necessarily clamoring for either of those, but I never thought we'd get Thanksgiving, you know, so and that took so long to make. So, you know, I'm down for as much horror as we can get and see what that looks like. But I got to admit, I think that Rob Zombie film might be a little bit of a hard sell for me.
Well, more of a hard sell than doing another Monsters movie?
Oh, that was an interesting review that we had up on the channel back when it had first come out, because that was we had some interesting comments. Yeah, that was probably our first controversial take on a film that we had when we had started the channel, because we were a little more positive than a lot of people were coming out of that one. Because I told Dylan as I was watching it, I had a bit of a moment of clarity, as I had my daughter on the way. That we watched that, like, was it October, maybe September, October?
It was only like a week or two before she was born.
And I was like, you know, this is halfway through it. I was like, I'm not into this film. I wanted to turn it off, and then I kind of sat there for a second. I paused it. I said, wait a second, this film's not for me at all, but I can show my daughter this. This could be like a pretty good gateway horror thing to say, oh, that's Frankenstein, or that's the Wolfman, you know, those takes on it. So Dylan and I had spoke about it before we did that review, and then we kind of came out. We're not saying it's a great film. We're saying it's not for us, but it's something where, you know, it could be an interesting gateway horror for a lot of kids. And, you know, I was not met too positively at all.
Well, I think the TV show was that for me for sure. Like it was on it must have been on like TBS or something when I was a kid, and, you know, Nick at Night and all that kind of stuff. So that age when I was like 6 or 7 and getting into the Universal Monsters, to be able to tune in and see a comedy show that was like cracking me up as a kid, and, you know, revisiting it, I think that's still very, very charming. Like, I love the aesthetic and everything of the Addams Family, but I think the Munsters is a way like funnier show, as you know, as far as all that goes. And
Munsters
yeah, I don't.
I watched on like TV Land and all that. Addams
There
Family,
you go.
I would only, it was like always a passive watch, but the Munsters, that comedy, just that take, always locked me in as a kid, and I would always just watch from. I think they would play like 2 episodes, so it'd be like a full hour, and I'd just watch each one. And then Addams Family for me was give or take. If I had the time, sure, I might watch an episode here or there, but Munsters was always appointment viewing.
Yeah, I think the Addams Family movies are better than the show.
Oh yeah,
or at least any better than any of the episodes I've seen of the show.
I think they got more fanfare, especially like from people closer to our age and stuff too, because like those were kind of the hot thing when they were coming out, more so than the show was. But I mean, yeah, I have to agree with Luke. I mean, we did the review. I thought that the Munsters, the Rob Zombie take wasn't the worst thing in the world. I know everybody loves the dog pile on him and everything. And, you know, it's not that I'm just sitting here defending it because of that, but I genuinely thought there's a lot of passion here. And I'm also just a big fan of him as a person. I think like every time I like get a chance to sit down and hear him just talk about his passion of film, music, things like that in an interview or something, it's always a conversation I step away from being like, damn it, Rob Zombie, I fucking hate some of your movies. I think they're garbage, but I love you, dude. Like and that's why I always say he's one of those filmmakers for me. It doesn't matter what the concept is. It doesn't matter what they're doing with it, how he's doing it. Just tell me Rob Zombie's got a new movie out. I'll watch it. I will watch it because I respect him enough. And who knows? Because I love House of a Thousand Corpses, but I didn't love Devil's Rejects, you know, I think that, you know, he's got a up and down kind of average for me.
Sure. I think with a lot of people, it's that way. I wonder, like, I just wonder if he's ever going to make a movie again. I don't know if he has any plans to do that. I mean, it seems like he's had a pretty, you know, rough go. You know, for the 15th anniversary of his Halloween 2, I, you know, watched the film with his commentary, and yeah, Dylan, same kind of thing. Like, as I'm listening to the commentary, I'm like, man, Rob and I like the same kind of music. Like, we're both like really into punk rock and like, you know, like the old school stuff and all. I'm like, he and I could really kick it. But yeah, I'm kind of there with you where it's like, I take his movies a la carte. You know, some of them don't really do it for me. Like, I am a big fan of H2, but I'm not the biggest fan of his remake just because that's a really tall order. You know, it'd be really, really difficult to do a remake of Halloween, you know, that I would ever find like ultimately necessary. But his H2 kind of like explores some weird shit that I like for some reason that's really difficult to explain.
we haven't been swayed on that side yet. I think that's going to be 5 years down the road. Luke and I will have our come to Jesus moment with H2, or when the views get low enough, we'll start doing that. So no, I'm kidding. I think like at the end of the day, I haven't given that one really a fair watch in a long time. And I think the last time we did it, did we go through all the Halloween movies, Luke, or was that all the Carpenters? I forget.
Yeah, that was all the Halloween films at the time.
And that was the last time, and that was what, 6 years ago?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I just remember, man, that film. I had to lay down after watching that one. That was something where I talked about it when we did the Beyond the Splattered Graves. I think it was on that one where I was like, I have never found a film that has kind of. And I love Rob Zombie as a person. I think he's great. But that film, for me, I've never been like creatively exhausted after a film other than watching that one. Some of the dialogue in that, just some of the story arcs in that one really did not do it for me. And I was like, okay, I need a break. I need like a 3-day meditation period.
And every year, man, every Halloween, people just are making videos, writing articles talking about how you need to go back and rewatch it. And I'm just like, I'm going to have to do it at some point and see if I get it. But like, I don't know. I've seen it many times, like 3 or 4 times now. And I am one of those people, though. I don't mind his remake so much. I think that the first half is just interesting enough for me. to keep me going. By the time we get to the pseudo remake of the original, it's like, okay, we're just getting through the end of it. Like, let's just move on through. But yeah, it's not what it is. I do like Lords of Salem though. If we're talking about like more recent stuff he's done, I think he did those. Wasn't that his first after H2?
So.
The witch one?
I think so. Yeah, and that's one I haven't seen, but that one looks really interesting and looks really from what I remember seeing of the trailer, or just, you know, whatever I saw of the film, like it looks, you know, beautifully shot, and, you know, a lot of symmetry, a lot of that like Kubrickian kind of symmetry in there. I remember seeing that, which is always, I like seeing that in movies. I don't know what it is. It's just something that's very, very pleasing. It must be one of the reasons why people like Kubrick so much. But yeah, that movie looked like one where maybe Sherry Moon was putting in a little bit of a better, you know, performance, I would say. Sometimes she's just a bit too deadpan, you know, just a bit.
Absolutely.
I think that was my issue with the Munsters. I was just sort of like, I don't get this. I don't get her here.
I think Ty just there hit it on the head, where I think that movie is kind of misunderstood. I feel like there was a lot of backlash from just people in general for him doing the Halloween films, and then that being his first one coming back. A lot of people wrote Rob Zombie off, and I am really curious. Like, I always talk about this like with friends and stuff. And I know I probably posed this way back in the day to Luke, but it's like, I wonder how his what's up, Dice Rolling? I wonder how his career would have shaken up if he hadn't done the Halloween movies. Like, what movies would we have gotten from him? Would he be somebody that, like, we would have gotten more of a positive spin on him? Like, I'm sure he'd still have some controversial films, but I think, like, at the end of the day, I think that's really where things started to get dicey for him.
Yeah, and it's like House of a Thousand Corpses to me is just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, pretty much.
Said that, and everybody thought I was crazy on Beyond the Splatter Grave. So it's like, it's the same movie.
It is, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most like kind of like loosely remade horror movies that I've ever seen. I mean, most of the sequels in the franchise are pretty much just like a retelling of that story anyways, and it seems like, yeah, maybe that and I know that movie was made, you know, a handful of years before his Halloween was due up. So, you know, it would have been interesting to see him actually get to make a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie if Marcus Nispel hadn't stepped in there. But yeah, kind of crazy for that to be the beginning of his career, you know, as a filmmaker, right? But Halloween was his first movie, right?
No, it was House of a Thousand Corpses.
House of a Thousand Corpses. Okay.
And then he did Devil's Rejects. Then he did Halloween.
Oh, both of them before. Okay. I thought it was maybe just the one right before. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I get why people, even with H2, and I can say all the positive things about it that, you know, I've got lined up, but man, there's plenty of that movie that doesn't work for me too. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't know if I need to hear fuck 20 times in a row. I just think that maybe like a few times is
maybe
enough,
10.
You know? Yeah. Can we cut it in half right there? Come on, Richard Brake. But yeah, you know, it's so yeah, maybe Werewolf Women of the SS is something that's not quite necessary. I think it would be fun to see him do something that's like his own stupid idea. You know, would be really, really cool. I think that maybe that's where he would, you know, be appreciated more by not revisiting or visiting properties that people are familiar with, because I think that can be a tough spot for him. But yeah, Luke, I really liked your idea on doing like an anthology series with the Don't. I dig that, man. That's a solid idea.
Yeah, I thought it could be interesting just because I don't know necessarily, at least from that take. Obviously, who knew there would be so much from, you know, Thanksgiving to get a feature, let alone a sequel to. But rewatching that trailer in preparation for this, I was like, there could be something there if you do kind of an anthology take of Don't. I was like, I just wish he had put that ... right at the end of it. Like,
there you go.
But I think it could be fun. Yeah. You know, I think it would be interesting to see, you know, if they ever did. I think Dylan, we had talked about this, didn't we? Where if they ever did like another Grindhouse feature of, you know, other directors, kind of, who would you want to do the double feature? Who would you want to do some of the Grindhouse trailers with? You know, it'd be interesting to see if they ever dust off that idea and, you know, bring it back to the theater with two different directors.
Do you have any picks for that, Davey? Because I was going to bring that up right after this anyway. So
that is a really good question, because I'm trying to think of people that would fit the bill. I'm trying not to double dip on people that did trailers in the first one, because I do think Rob Zombie would be great for a Grindhouse movie.
Absolutely.
Like, if I'm gonna double dip, if I'm double dipping, then to me that's like a good way to go. I actually think it'd be really fun, and I know he's like a big deal now, and I think that's great, and I want to see him continue doing whatever he sees fit for his own career. But I think Fede Alvarez would make for a really fun director for a Grindhouse movie. Even Damien Rugna, who did When Evil Lurks, which is probably my favorite horror film of 2023. I would give that guy the keys to whatever. Although I like his own creation. So yeah, I think that's a really fun idea there. And then I don't know, trailers. Wow, you guys, it's like my show and you guys are like hitting me with the good stuff. I think it'd be really cool to maybe bring in some bigger names for the trailers. Would be fun, right? Just have guys that can put in like a couple days of work, like have Robert Eggers do a trailer for a Grindhouse movie.
That like would be wild.
It would take him like no time at all. The guy's a total pro. Or somebody like Oz Perkins. Like those are the ones that are like popping off to my, although your boy Damien Leone would be pitch perfect for a Grindhouse feature as well. I'm very interested in seeing what he does either after Terrifier. I don't know if he has an end in sight for that, or if he would ever hand it off and just control the story and all that kind of stuff and let somebody else direct them so he can do other features, because I'm really interested in seeing what else he has up his sleeve as far as where else he can go dynamically as a director.
Oh, absolutely. I like a lot of those picks, Davey. Those are good ones. Luke, what do you have in mind for those?
Davey did steal one of mine. Fede Alvarez was on my list of guys I want to see. I think to have a couple tentpole directors in that spot to kind of get people in the theater to check them out. Fede Alvarez would easily be one of those guys. I think Ty West would be another one.
Oh yeah,
I hate you so much.
So looking at something like
that was my silver bullet. Damn it! All right,
that would be good.
Those two for me, that would be a stupendous double feature just to be able to sit there, especially if this was like out in the drive-in. It'd be absolutely perfect. Now, guys, for some creators for those trailers, I had Joe Bagos on that. I think he would do wonderfully. Stephen C. Miller, after seeing Werewolves, I was like, oh yeah, this guy has to do something. Corley Farga, I forget.
For The Substance?
Yeah, from The Substance. I think she could do a great one. And then I'd love to see my boys from Blood and Honey.
Really?
Just a
Hell yeah.
Wacky
that would
trailer.
be fun.
That would be fun as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Go ahead. Yeah, go.
No, I was just gonna say, would you guys want like Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino to produce? Would you want their?
Oh, 100%.
Is this something that they would carry, sort of like Tim Burton presents? It would be like Rodriguez and Tarantino present, or something like that. They could do that every year. Like they could just crank these out the way they did Saw.
It'd be amazing, because I agree with you guys. A couple of my picks got stolen for like if I'm gonna do like the way I broke it down, I had backups. One of them I have to take because it's out there, but I think we could get them. So for my two directors, I had Ty West as my main one there, and then I don't know if he's big enough for everybody else, but my other one was Joe Lynch.
Yes.
But then if I had to sub out somebody for a bigger name, because how Hollywood is and stuff, I was gonna go James Wan and Ty West. I thought like they could do the movies. And then I also had on there for trailers, I had Peter Jackson was a big one that I thought would be great to have him come back to horror, do something wild, do something crazy. I had Jordan Peele on there. I think could do a lot of fun with that. And I kind of, anybody's kind of, I could take them or leave them as far as like where they sit position wise. But then I also had, where'd he go? Hang on, I lost my notes here. Mike Flanagan was another one I had there. And then, it was Jennifer Kent.
Yeah.
She did The Nightingale, and she did the Babadook. So I thought like she would bring a unique voice to it. So, you know, and then one more here, David Cronenberg. I also had him in there as a trailer.
Damn. All right. Peter Jackson, what Dice says here, and what you just voiced, I would love to see him come back to horror. Dead Alive is one of my favorites of all time. There's just so much his creativity, like it's so cool to see that the tricks that he, you know, put on film for Dead Alive were tricks that he ended up using for one of the biggest budgeted films of all time. Like, I love that he never lost the creativity. Similar to when Sam Raimi went over to Spider-Man and he brought like all those herky-jerky camera movements, but still found a way to make everything else accessible, you know?
Oh, yeah. And fun fact for everybody out there, Dead Alive is not Peter Jackson's first film. Don't make that mistake. You'll never live it down.
Number two.
I fucked that up real bad a couple weeks ago.
You get a comment on that at least once a day.
Like 3 times a day. Like my films that are more disturbing than Terrifier list, I went in so confident that I didn't fact check myself or double check myself at all. I'm like, Dead Alive is his first film, and then it was Bad Taste. Because I hadn't seen Bad Taste yet, so I've only seen Dead Alive because those movies are like, I think you can find them on YouTube, people were telling me, but I hadn't seen that or Meet the Feebles, so it was just like, fuck, I guess this is it, right? This has got to be the one.
Yeah.
And I was wrong, and I will never live that down. So it's like, that's it. And it's like our highest performing video, so I'm just gonna keep getting that comment for like the next 2 years. Like
you just reply back, be like, "Thank you for the engagement. I appreciate it."
I wrote a little comment on the top there, like the next day when people started correcting me, I was like, "Damn!" I just was like, "Yeah." I went in confident. I said this was I thought I knew better. I did not. I apologize. I understand that these 2 movies came before. I'm sorry, but you know, nobody reads. They just were like, "Hey, this guy is wrong. I'm gonna correct him." So here we go. It's like, damn.
You could just be like, I meant that it was his first film. In that Bad Taste felt like sort of a, you know, training wheels project. That's all. It was just
his first legitimate film.
Yeah,
like,
that was the context that I was saying it was his first film was, you know, it was all about the context.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and Bad Taste used to be like, for a really long time, it was like, couldn't find it. You know, I mean, you know, when Dead Alive came out over here, it was like pretty shocking and pretty wild. Maybe still could be up there with the bloodiest films of all time. I mean, as far as straight up blood goes, it probably gives Terrifier a run for its money. But I think what Terrifier does is a bit more trying to go for that realism and that like gross out factor a bit more than something like Dead Alive.
And that's why I put Dead Alive on there, is because, and people don't get that either, because everybody's like, this movie's funny. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, it's funny, yes, but it's got way more gore than Terrifier does, like, at all. Like, just the zombie dude on the chainsaw, like, not the chainsaw, the lawnmower spinning around. It's like, bro, like, what do you mean? Yeah.
Oh my! And he has to like cut his way out of his giant mom's snatch with like the medallion or whatever. Like it is, it's funny, but even I don't know, whatever. I laugh at Terrifier. I think I don't know what like. It's like I know it's not real, so I'm laughing at how ridiculous it is. I'm like, I can't believe this is what I'm seeing on screen right now. All right, here we go.
I think people take titles very literally on YouTube when it comes to certain videos, and it just drives me insane. It's like, I explain myself. Listen, it's like, whatever.
Oh, they got no time for that. Yeah, I did is Bride of Chucky the best like horror comeback or whatever, and someone commented like, is it even a horror movie though? To me, it's comedy, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's both. Yeah, it definitely counts as horror. You can't just say it's not just because you laugh. Like the Scream movies are funny, but they're horror films, you know.
And that's the thing, like even Nightmare on Elm Street, they get funnier and funnier as they go along. So it's kind of like, you know, I think there are some people who are just wired, and I think they're not like people who, not to sound elitist, but aren't like as deep in the horror space, because you can clearly tell when somebody's like, no, this is supposed to be scary, jokes are bad, stop it. And it's like, no.
Man, I got into one of the most contentious arguments I've ever been into in a bar when I was like newly 21, which oddly enough was 21 years ago. This guy like just did not believe me that the first Evil Dead is a horror film that is not meant to make you laugh. And I was like, he was getting like really into it. I was like, dude, I'm not trying to get into a bar fight over this. All I'm saying is I do think
one reason to get into a bar fight.
Yeah, be like, no, I read the interview where Sam Raimi said they intended it to be scary. And just because they went funny in the rest of the movies doesn't mean that one was supposed to be funny. Yeah, it was pretty wild. It was a wild time to be alive.
Hey, not everybody can be as, I guess, what is the word I'm looking for? Experienced or as, open-minded as we are, I guess,
Or just a little bit of nuance always helps, whatever you're talking about, whether you're analyzing art or philosophy or whatever, we got to have some of that.
I'll just rip the Band-Aid off. We're better than you. That's all we're trying to say right now. It's like that's what it is. Okay?
You don't understand it the way that I understand it.
You just don't get it. That's my favorite comment.
Yeah. Shout out to Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That is another really funny, really bloody, great horror movie.
The wood chipper scene in that too. Another one where it's just like all that gore, craziness, absolutely, but it's still hilarious movie.
Yeah.
The Great Evil Dead Bar Fight of 2012. There you go.
Oh, it would have been great. I should have done it. I should have just decked the guy,
Would have been a story.
There, and Dice puts it perfectly. I'm in front of a camera and you're not.
Love it.
I think that's one of my favorite things when people give me shit in the comments. I'm like, I'm gonna see like how many subs this person has. Oh, they don't even make videos. Okay, cool. Well, I won't worry about it then.
Doesn't matter.
I'm toxic as fuck. I do that too sometimes. Like I feel like a piece of shit when I get like that in my feels about a comment. Like someone really just hits you with something and you're just like, man, like what do you do? And it's like, oh. Well, I spent 5 hours of my weekend, multiple days, recording, editing, making sure this works, fighting copyright claims. You didn't do shit. Like, get out of here.
It is funny, and usually I assume when people have some sort of snarky suggestion or something, I'm like, oh, they probably don't have their channel, because people that have their channels don't are doing their own thing, usually don't reach out with that kind of advice. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a good time. What a great time. So with Thanksgiving 2 coming out next year, I would imagine we'll get it probably same time we got the first one, mid-November. What do you guys want to see? Dylan, you had mentioned maybe John Carver gets a sidekick. Do you want to see something like that? Luke, what are you expecting to see, or how do you think Eli Roth is gonna surprise us again? And do you think that he's going to give us another masterclass here in slasher filmmaking?
Luke, you take it away first. I'm always curious to hear what yours are, because then I'll just take the seeds and go off it.
I see. Well, looking at this on the channel here, I just absolutely love sequels, and there's some out there that I find that are way more intriguing than the original, just because you have that base. You start with your basic story, but then how are you going to be able to really take that story and move the ball a few yards down, so to speak? Mm-hmm. I think Eli Roth did such a great job in terms of laying the groundwork for that first film, and it hits all the beats. There's nothing out of there that's just like overly original. I think it works because we hadn't seen it so well done in such a long period of time that it kind of just warms your heart. But looking at that sequel, I'm really excited about it in the sense that I have so much faith after seeing that first one of what they can do. I think the most intriguing part of that sequel is they can add that element. Is this the same killer from that first one? Always adding that doubt in. Is that going to be something that, okay, it's just a rehash. We're going to keep the killer off screen for the most point, and then at the end we'll get that big unveiling of who could this be. So I think that's going to be the most intriguing part of this, is that adding back that element of who done it, because And how can you approach that? Because you already did it in the first film. We know the outcome of that, and I think people are gonna look at Psycho 2. Sorry, I just saw that. Absolutely love that Psycho 2. I we did a podcast on that one. That one's fantastic. But looking at it, I'm really excited to see how they're going to do that, because they get to retell that story of who done it. And I think I have so much faith in Eli Roth and his team to say, what kind of beats can we put in this? Because we saw, like we said, it's reminiscent of the 80s, that original. And I'm so excited to look at Thanksgiving 2 and say, man, I don't put them on different playing fields, where, the original, it's always great. It's always fantastic. But that sequel is just as good from a storytelling perspective, because we told a different story. So I'm excited to see just bringing back that element of intrigue and see, is this going to be the same story? Is this going to be the same killer? Or are we adding something different here?
Well, I don't have a full-blown pitch, but I do like the idea of, when we're getting the sequel, the biggest piece that I need to find before my head can go in either direction is how far apart is this sequel from the first film? Is this the next year? Is this 2-3 years is set in the same time that we're living in? Or are they doing like a 5-year time jump kind of deal? Because that's really going to set everything up for me as to what they could really do with it. Because I think, say, skip over Thanksgiving 2, if they went to a Thanksgiving 3, I'd love to see our main character kind of maybe having kids of her own, and now John Carver is this legend in a sense, almost like a Michael Myers, a more, but I think more in the sense of a that old story with the hook and the people in the it's something like that, like an old urban legend. And I'd love to see that kind of get played into a little bit with him, where it's is he really back, is he not? But I think faithfully what they're going to go for is, I really think that they are going to have John Carver come back. I think they're going to have the same character with the sheriff. He's going to come back, and I think that they're gonna go from there. How and what exactly his role is going to be interesting. I would really like to see if they wanted to kind of follow the Scream route of pulling the rug out from under us, and maybe having him get like Sheriff Newton die halfway through, and then we find out there is another one. I know somebody commented, no, we can't have a sidekick because Halloween Ends tried that. I'm not saying like that. I'm just saying maybe there's 2 John Carvers, because again, with Mask, it's a very basic costume. Anybody can do it. So it just depends on what it is. And the fact that they already set the first one up to be about revenge, there's many reasons why they could be wanting revenge. More people died, you know what I mean? I hope they don't just follow the same path as Scream and say oh, it's oh god, what was I'm really bad with everybody's names. The jock kid who got his head smashed in. What's his name?
Evan,
oh, poor Evan. If Evan's mom or somebody is the killer next time around, it's don't do that. But you gotta kind of find an inlet there. But I'm like Luke, I trust that he did so well with this one. I think he'll know what tropes to go into, even if I don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that I fully trust these guys after watching that movie. I'm fell in love with it the first day it came out on Blu-ray. I was I don't even care if it's gonna come out later in a special awesome looking box set that I'm gonna be totally jealous of everyone who owns it. I'm gonna buy it right now because I have to watch this movie again. That's just I'm at that point where I'm just these guys put together, to me, the perfect modern slasher, and the best original slasher that I've seen since the first Scream. I would put Thanksgiving up there for me, because it's been there. We haven't had that many newer characters since then. I know that we have had some, but that, I would say Thanksgiving's easily my favorite one. And I kind of want it to be, I guess, when Herbert was saying don't make it like Halloween Ends, you had mentioned the sidekick. It makes me think of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Which sort of works. I'm not saying that movie is great, but at least he had a son, and he is still alive, but his son was also helping him. But I do like your idea, Dylan, of what if he gets killed after the first act or something like that, and it'll be interesting. I think. Do you guys think he is still alive? I mean, when the one firefighter is walking out and like slow motion looks right at Jess, I figure, oh, that's got to be him. Like they wouldn't tease us just to not bring him back, right? You got to have that charred Patrick Dempsey, with his amazing New England accent.
And I think that's a fun aspect. Us being horror fans, we're here discussing it. Do you think that could be him? I think, it is him. I think regardless if we see him in the second one or not, it could be even just a tidbit of just that very final moments of seeing him. Maybe he does have a sidekick or something like that, a copycat killer, whatever you want to say. Hey, the mask is possessed. Hey, Halloween ends, right? That works. So I think even if we see him toward the end, I think there's enough gas in the tank here. We haven't seen a modern slasher like this where we could say, hey, we could get 5 films out of this if we wanted to. I think you could play on that third installment there and say, we get a little tidbit at the end there to say the more in-depth stories taking place in that third installment. So I think he's still alive. I think Eli Roth obviously knows his audience. He knows the tropes to play on. So it's like always that aspect of is the killer still out there? So regardless if we get him or we don't get him fully in the second one, I still think the killer's out there and we will see him return.
And I agree. I think he's definitely going to come back in some capacity. I think that it just makes sense to have him as the killer again in this, especially because he's got more motivation now. I mean, he had great motivation in the first, but like it's even more personal, I would say. And I think that for this one, ultimately, I'm excited to see how the town reflects on all this, because now, like we've seen with like Halloween 4 and other things, it's like once everybody knows about it, and it's kind of like, well, this is our big like urban legend. Like I was saying, it's like I'm gonna be excited to see how like the teenagers and everybody starts playing with this world a little bit. It's like suddenly, are they outlawing Thanksgiving? Or are they outlawing John Carver masks? Like, what tropes is he gonna play into? Because it's like that's gonna be awesome to see, and I'm excited. But I do think he'll be back. I think that makes the most sense. But what they need to do is they need to give us an outlet if they're going to do a third one, to give us some kind of a way to make this make sense for continuing on. Because I don't think having him be the killer every time is going to last past one sequel.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I think the perfect way they can do this trilogy, like I was saying at the top of the show, with having each one be a little bit of a different slasher, is you have the whodunit revenge, then you have the return of that killer. He comes back, so you already know who he is. You get your traditional kind of like slasher film, slasher sequel, and then we do get the copycat in the third movie, where it becomes a whodunit again. And but maybe it doesn't have to be a revenge whodunit. Maybe it is a whodunit that's somebody chasing clout, or some sort of modern take on like why this person would do that. But I do like that.
Sequel, baby. Let's do that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I like the idea of having the holiday canceled, because we haven't it seems like that was a part of all of these Halloween scripts that were never used. They mention it in Curse, like they mention that it's been a while and we're finally celebrating it again, but you don't ever get to like live in that space. And so I think it would be interesting, in a Thanksgiving movie to have that cancellation of Thanksgiving, especially to a place where it's literally like the town's identity,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think like that was another aspect to it where it's like, it's like setting, Valentine's Bluff for My Bloody Valentine. You know what I mean? Setting it in Plymouth with just like, it's like literally the spot, the Thanksgiving town in our entire country here. It's like, that's the beauty of it, is like, what if you take that identity away because of all this tragedy? It's like there's so much fun and so much creativity to be had there. Again, it's like I think they've got the idea. I think that both of them, when it comes to Jeff Rendell and Eli Roth, I think they clearly know what they want to do. And because they've been saying it, they were saying it the weekend the movie came out. They're like, I hope we get to do our sequel. So I have full faith that they already have it worked out, mapped out. And I think that's the best way to do it. They have to do it like that, because I hate more than anything if the most recent Star Wars trilogy and anything has taught me, you gotta have a plan, baby. You gotta know what the fuck you're doing. You can't just wing it anymore. I know that worked, I guess, in the 80s. Can't do that now. You gotta plan this shit out. So
now I'm sad because you brought up the Star Wars sequels.
I'm sorry. You know, it hurts me too, man. God.
Luke, what you got over there? How do you feel about the Star Wars sequels?
You know, I checked out after. Oh my gosh. So, what do we have? We have. Was it The Force Awakens and then
Rogue
and
One?
Then
The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi. Then what was after The Last Jedi? Because I saw the last
Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. I've never seen. I saw The Last Jedi. I was not too hot on that one.
That's the best one, baby.
It took me forever actually to watch Star Wars because my name's Luke. So I went through school with Luke your father deal, and I just kind of stayed away from the franchise as a whole. I did not discover or actually sit down and watch Star Wars in its entirety, with the first 6 episodes at the time, until college. So I was like,
oh wow,
yeah. I finally sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna commit. I mean, they were fun watches, but I was like, I had enough of the Luke Skywalker joke. So, and then after The Last Jedi, I clocked out. So I still have to complete that, but I've just lost interest in it. It was something where harder sell to start, and then I kind of got into it, and then the quality of them just kind of dwindled for me. So I was like, maybe I'll come back to it one day. I'm too busy with Thanksgiving.
On the plus side, you don't have that attachment that so many of us have.
That's
where
it's like I don't have a dog in the fight. Where I'm like, hey, I totally get you grew up on it. You absolutely love it. Hey, if you're unhappy with it, go for it. But I'm just gonna sit over here and watch horror movies.
Maybe Disney will wise up and do a horror version of a Star Wars movie. You know, who knows?
The games did the Ewok survival mode for Battlefront 2. That game crashed when it first came out, and then they like revived it, and then they added that mode, and I was like, this is the most fun I've had with a Star Wars game in decades. Like, I love that concept of being a bunch of stormtroopers in the forest of Endor, and then there's just other players as these little tiny bears just chasing you with spears and shit. It's so awesome.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I didn't get too into the games. A lot of the newer games, I tried to play one of them where you're like the redheaded guy.
Those are I
one of the most
those.
difficult games I've ever played in my life, where I was just like, oh my god,
it's a Souls-like game. They're very difficult because it's like where you beat the bosses or like the bad guys, and then you go back just to go get some more stuff, or have to go double back, and you're like, wait, they're alive again? What the fuck is this? It's just punishment, but I like it. It's good.
Difficult jumps and all that kind of stuff. But now I'm in this whole Star Wars thing. It's funny. The other day we got stuck on a Star Wars thing, and it went totally off the rails. But real quick, but I know we've been chatting for a little bit over an hour. I want to be respectful of your guys' time and everything. But before we kind of wrap up here, did you guys notice all of the, like, when you rewatch Thanksgiving, do you notice all the dead giveaways that it's the sheriff the whole time? I mean, the very first shot of the film gives it away, which is wild.
I noticed it a lot this second time around. Definitely that. I mean, it's the biggest thing is, like, you can clearly tell watching this again that him and what's her face again? Sorry, I'm bad with names.
Gina Carano? Gina Carano. Not Gina Gershon.
I
got the Star Wars on the brain.
They have something going on. You can tell that they're flirting a little bit. They have that energy together. And when she dies, it's like, that's when he like breaks and pulls out the gun, and it's like, you could tell there's a little something more there, and I fucking love it. It's like my wife hadn't seen it again since she went to the screening with us. So when we watched it on Sunday, she was so caught up in it, and she's like, just a completely different movie once you know he's the killer. And I'm just like, it's brilliant. It's really well done. Yeah,
he's like, go ahead, Luke.
That's where, like, you can easily tell that relationship. Something's going on. That's what I love about, especially as we do the reviews on the channel and everything like that, because I'll try to watch films twice if I can, if I have the time to watch them. And throughout a lot of the horror films, there are so many dead giveaways. You'll never find me. Watching that film a second time gives you a whole different perspective of, like, because they're telling you, they're leading you to answers, and you're just seeing them float right by your eyes. You know, you're not really zeroing in on all the details. But once you get that layout of the full story, and then you get to go back and rewatch it, and that's what I love about Thanksgiving, because I think that's one of the films where it's so digestible, but you can always pick up new things and new dynamics as you're watching it, because it's like that relationship. There's just something so off, but you're, at least in the theater, I was not paying attention to it because I'm like just taking in the scenery at the time and trying to get my bearings, and I absolutely love that aspect of it.
Yeah, when she said, like, when he says something like that he knows his way around a kitchen and all that stuff, like, even that's a little bit of a tease. There was the one that really hit me the second time I watched it, where I was like, oh my gosh, is when they all get, you know, during the parade, when, you know, John Carver's dressed as the clown, he throws the grenade, he shoots them with the tranquilizers, they drive off, and the car says sheriff on the back. I'm just like,
yes,
that's the most, I'm like, oh shit, they're like putting it right in your face, like, this is the sheriff.
Come on. Dead giveable.
Exactly.
And it's so smart. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's
no, go for it, Dylan.
I agree with it. I think that it's like it's little things like that like you can rationalize it to yourself, where you're like, hey, no, he just stole the sheriff's car. Like, that's not like, you know, you can tell yourself like that, but it's like, no, it's like they're literally saying right there, like, hey, idiot, it's right here. And even him,
you know,
it's like them playing with the mask in the diner right at the start too. It's like he's messing around with it, having the guy put it on with the hat and everything. It's just like he's literally just fucking around with it. And I think one of the things that was kind of criticized about the movie, and I never actually paid attention to, but I know I saw some criticism for it, was like, I guess people were saying that the John Carver, like, actor, the person who played him in the actual, like, suit and everything, was taller than Patrick Dempsey. So it's like that kind of was like something that gave it, like, it was something where it was like a mislead, but I'm like, I think that's just as smart, because it's like, you know, he is the character when he's in that costume, you know what I mean? He is like the killer. It's like it almost embodies its own kind of horror by doing that, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think multiple actors played him. I think they did that on purpose, and so sometimes it is Dempsey and other times it's not. I know when it was the clown guy, it was Milo Manheim, who was you know, Jess's new boyfriend Ryan or whatever, the lovable asshole. But yeah, that they had him play that version of John Carver. So yeah, I think they're purposely kind of messing with your you know, your memory. They're playing with the Mandela effect.
And it's so smart, because it just shows, this is a term Luke likes to use a lot, but Eli Roth is such a student of the game. He understands exactly what he's doing when he does stuff like that, because he's like, I am a horror fan. I know what really hardcore horror fans are going to be looking at. I know how smart audiences are and how much these tropes are played out, that I gotta really mess with people. I gotta let it go. It's so good.
And that's why, like, looking at the sequel when we were talking about it, it's so thrilling in a sense, where as you rewatch that first film, it's like, okay, dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Some things are so on the nose, and even as you're watching that film, you're like, well, they're not going to give us those answers, right? You're always second guessing yourself. But even like, I think that first film in their approach almost accentuates that, is going to accentuate the second film, because it's like, well, they were on the nose. They were giving us these dead giveaways, and they're going to be aware of that in the sequel and be like, we're trying to lead you down several different paths. And that's why I'm excited for that sequel, is like, how many different red herrings are they going to give us and be like, nope, we're going down this path rather than here. We're going to zig and zag.
That's a really good point, because I had myself all wrapped up in it. Yeah, watching it the first time, I was like, oh, they're not going to make it him, because it just seems like that's the obvious way to go. And then even during the whole, like, high school, like, the chase scene and everything in there, I was like, he's so, like, I didn't believe that it was him, because I'm like, right when she runs out of the school or whatever she's found, he's just there by his car, you know, in his regular sheriff outfit. So I just figured, oh, I guess they're kind of telling us that it's not really him. So, and then of course, you know, like Herbert said here, he was a good red herring in Scream 3. So I think that sort of plays with your expectations too. You know, when you go to see another whodunit, there was part of that in the back of my mind where I was like, I think it's him, but I think that they're just tricking me. And then it ended up being the most obvious answer of all.
Plus, Patrick Dempsey's so damn likable, so it's like you don't believe it. You know what I mean? It's like
he is great, and I saw like an interview with him, and this was something that he had told his agent, like, hey, keep an eye out for horror movies because I really want to be in a horror movie again, because it had been since Scream 3, I think, and he really enjoyed the experience. So that's sort of how he came on the radar for Eli Roth. And then I didn't know this either, but he's from the Northeast, so that's like his original accent. Maybe he probably hams it up a little bit. It's really, I love when he's like, I told you that Kathleen would make a lovely dinner. like he almost
he goes
sounds
for it at the end there too, dude. I love it.
He sounds like a character from Jaws or something like that. It's great. Not too far from the yard, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I really think they knocked this movie out of the park in like every step of the way, because like, I mean, I don't know like if it's just the passes I give this movie because I'm such a big slasher fan and because it is that like comfort food for me, but like I just don't see any flaws really in this movie. Like anything that I could necessarily call a flaw, I'm so easy to forgive it because this movie just makes me happy. Like it puts a smile on my face whenever I think about watching it. Again, I just watched it this weekend with my wife, and seeing her reactions to it and getting excited about it again, because she's not like me very much. She'll watch TV shows and documentaries and stuff, but like rewatching movies, it's very few and far between that she's like excited to rewatch again. And this was one that she just was like, yeah, I'm down. I'm feeling this again. It's awesome. I love it.
I think there's something. I think the chicks dig the mystery. If I can speak in generalities here, because my wife isn't the biggest horror fan either, but she loves those Scream movies, and I think there is a little bit of that, like it's got that mystery element, that whodunit element that is just maybe a bit more accessible for someone that wouldn't be prone to, enjoying horror films. But yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Dylan. I'm trying to think of something in the movie that doesn't work for me or rubs me the wrong way, and I don't think I can think of one thing. I mean, there's like a different implement of destruction used every time, which is a pretty difficult thing to do, so kudos to those guys for thinking of that. And then we didn't even talk about the best character in the movie, the McCarty guy. that guy's he's amazing, and he's such a sweet guy, even though he's got like this hick element or whatever you want to call him, like this kind of trashy element, but he really is like a very sweet guy and a really good character that I hope gets a little more play in the sequel.
I hope so too. I mean I really loved McCarty. He was definitely something that was like, when he first gets brought on scene and everybody's talking about him like he's some kind of a creep or something, where it's like, nah, he's actually a heartfelt dude. Like, especially again, right at the same time that you're kind of like really falling in love with Scuba, he shows up and he's just like giving him the guns and stuff, and he's just like, y'all gotta be safe out there, and everything. It's like he actually gives a shit. Like, he cares.
He does. Yeah, he does. And oh, go for it, Luke.
I think it's all about the moments, where I think the writing is so well done in that film, at least from my perspective, where it can be so on the nose or it can fall into the tropey stuff intentionally. But then these characters, they have redeeming qualities to them where they're not completely, like, you can find yourself maybe disliking one of them, but then they redeem themselves in some fashion. And I think that's hard to do with a lot of horror films, because in some ways we've grown to, you have to hate a lot of the characters and you're just watching them be killed off by slashers. But I think that's why Thanksgiving kind of works so well. I was looking at the film, I was talking to my wife about it last night actually, and I had come up with the idea that looking at this film, Dylan and I weren't the biggest fans of the 2018 Halloween, and I think as that trilogy went on, a lot of people kind of were like, I'm not a big fan of kills, I'm not a big fan of Halloween Ends, and then we weren't huge on the last Scream installments either. But I think looking at Thanksgiving, I think because Halloween failed in a sense for us in terms of what we wanted, and I'm a huge Halloween 4 fan, I think Thanksgiving succeeded because it gave us what we wanted. It gave us what we wanted from the Halloween films, that kind of feeling that we wanted. So I think where we didn't get that from Halloween, we didn't get that from Scream, we certainly got it from Thanksgiving. And that's why that, while it does play on the tropes, and it's nothing overly unique in terms of what we've seen in slashers, it still does work so well because we hadn't gotten in such a long period of time, at least not this well done, that it is so digestible, it is so rewatchable, and it's hard to kind of create that magic, but Eli Roth and his team did it here.
Yeah, that I couldn't have said it better myself. That is that's the trick of it, right? Finding the right group of people. Obviously you have to have a great story and a great script. And yeah, I think that you know, let's see here. Dean said the main flaw for me was on the first watch of the theater. I didn't find any of the characters to be likable. But I think, Dean, I think that's just all that's done purposefully through the writing. You know, it's even a guy like Evan, who's supposed to be like one of our good guys, like Evan's a dick. Like he's just like a different, he's not the most like ill-meaning of dicks, but he's a total dick. Like he's completely selfish and all that kind of stuff. But like we still like the character because he's written in a way that there's something still charming about him. Even Ryan, like the jerky new boyfriend, you know, and all the characters I think were just performed really well, and they all stand apart. And I think that's another really tough thing to do in a slasher, is to have your cannon fodder come off as like unique personalities, you know, without being caricatures too.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, I really give kudos to Eli Roth and his buddy there, Jeff Rendell, because they absolutely, you could tell that they started off, like you said, where they were just kind of ditzy teenagers with those tropes, ready to just say, hey, let's kill them. But then, like, as the movie progresses, they just get more and more human, and you almost like fall for them as the movie goes on. And that is really smart, because it's like, I feel like a lot of pressure comes out when it's like, you know, oh, I got to make these characters likable from the jump, otherwise nobody's going to care. And, you know, it's like, I think you're right, where it's like they're realistic in a sense, like they feel natural, like a little bit more natural than what some people get at the start there. But I think like as the film goes on, it's just like, well, damn, I don't want to see like these people get hurt. I don't want to see any of this. And it's like, yeah, Evan's a dick and it sucks, but like watching him die in such a brutal way with the meat like tenderizer, it's like it's rough, man. It's definitely, it's one of those things where you're just like, you feel it. Yeah.
You see his brains get turned into cranberry sauce. It's
yes, yeah. I think that
quite the turn.
Is it Yelena, the girlfriend of Scuba?
Or Juliana, or Juliana.
Yeah, her death to me is like one of the more tragic ones, because like getting the little the corn cob things in the ears and then falling on the table saw, it's like, Jesus Christ, like, oh man, like,
man, when her fingers get cut off by it's like I can feel it. I get phantom pain where I'm like, oh my god,
like we can all after another going.
And we all know what it's like to like jam a finger or like break your fall. We all know what it's like to have your you know, hurting your fingers is like, oh man, I gotta use these things for stuff. And then just imagine falling on the saw and they just, I don't know. It's in a very real moment when Scuba is sitting there holding her saying, what do I do, Jess? What do I do?
Yeah.
Like a very real, in a movie that's like relatively lighthearted for a slasher movie. Like that's a pretty grounding moment for sure. Yeah, man, this movie's friggin' fantastic. I can't wait for the sequel. I'm right there with you guys where, you know, the Grindhouse trailer is really fun and everything, but I'm happy that we got this version of the film because it pretty much ensured that there would be a way better opportunity for success and a greater opportunity for sequels down the line, for sure.
Oh yeah, I think that the sequel is going to kick ass. I mean, even if it's not as good as this one, even if it's just a fraction as entertaining, it's all a part of the gimmick. You know what I mean? It's all a part of the game. Once you have it's like, this is our Halloween. So if we can get Halloween 2 level, like, hey, I'm good with that. And I love Halloween 2, but like, you know, it's like, if we can get there, I'm solid. Let's go.
Yeah.
And we honestly, the sequels, like, you know, we talked about Halloween, we talked about Scream, where those ones are kind of like hit or miss, where most of the time we're leaning a little more negative on it. But like looking at Thanksgiving and saying, hey, we're getting a sequel. We actually witnessed the creation of a new slasher here. We're gonna get a sequel, maybe an entire franchise. Who knows if we're gonna, get more after that sequel? But it's rather interesting because it's like we get to see how this plays out now. We get to see what story is going to be told here. So I think this is so exciting just because, hey, we don't know what that looks like, but to look at a film like this and say they're so in tune with what made a lot of the 80s slashers great. I think for the first time, I'm so excited about the potential of an actual franchise because it's like, well, what other beats are they going to hit? What other kind of stories are they going to tell? Because they are in tune with what a lot of horror fans want. So I think, honestly, Thanksgiving, going into that sequel, this is one where I'm most confident in terms of them producing something I'm going to at least find enjoyable.
Yeah. I and now like we're living in a different time now where the studios they kind of know what they have once they get a hit in the slasher subgenre. Whereas in the 80s, it was sort of like throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and then they'll just figure out the sequels. If they have to figure out the sequels, they'll just do it then. Like every Friday the 13th movie is like, well, yeah, the other movie happened, but we're not really going to clear up any continuity for the most part. And yeah, Tommy Jarvis might be in these movies, but he's going to be played by 3 different characters and blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, what we've seen with something like Terrifier, where the lore has been expanded upon in every sequel. I think each subsequent film has gotten better than the previous film. Like, I think Terrifier 3 is the best one out of the 3. I think that we're kind of in this age where it's like, maybe the studios will listen a little bit and make sure that these things are handled well and ushered to the point where I think the second Thanksgiving movie could be better than the first one. Like, I'm like, all right, let's go. Like, let's really crank it up and get this thing humming, because we need another. Art is great, don't get me wrong. I think Terrifier is really fun, but to have something that's a little more accessible or whatever, like, I think that's really important too.
Oh yeah, and I'm excited, and I know we're just extending this whole thing out, I'm sorry, but like the last piece of this that I wanted to mention is just like, I'm so happy that John Carver like took off for me personally, and I'm so hoping that sequel just elevates him just like Terrifier did for some people. And because like to have this new class of slasher villains starting to pop up where it's like, I think we can bring in, personally for me, I know this one's a stretch for some, but I think Victor Crowley, if you give him another go and you start giving us some more Hatchet sequels, especially let Adam Green at the helm of those again, I think you can get them. Sam gets a sequel with Trick or Treat 2. Man, John Carver, Art the Clown. I mean, Luke and I are kind of getting excited because the same company that put this out is putting out Hard Eyes. I don't know if you saw the Hard Eyes trailer, Davey, but like,
I haven't yet.
Watch that trailer and get back to me, man, because like it's just a teaser, but like it's giving us some Thanksgiving vibes. It's definitely it's looking like it. It could be another one where it's nice and fun. I don't want to put the cart too far before the horse, but I'm just saying.
Is it a Valentine's thing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because we need another good Valentine's movie, because that Valentine movie with David Boreanaz is like one of the
classic. Instant classic.
I don't know about that one. there are some cool shots of the Cupid Killer. I think the Cupid Killer is kind of a cool look. But for the most part, that movie's like a TV show.
He's got a nosebleed, Davey. Come on. It's great character.
Yeah. And the movie ends without the killer reveal happens to the audience, but to no one in the movie. You guys know you swung and missed the ball. Oh. Well, yeah, this has been awesome, guys. I agree. I think we've sort of we've extended the Thanksgiving love as much as we possibly can. There's a whole lot of love here on this live stream for for Thanksgiving, and looking forward to the sequel as well. What do you guys have coming up here that people can look forward to? I know you had mentioned the Christmas to December to Dismember.
That's coming out in December, so we have a little bit of time. We got that Werewolves review on the horizon, dropping beginning of December there when it's released, and then just working on our list, hard at work. We got a special Thanksgiving Day themed one coming out, so that'll be out next week certainly. And then we got a couple other things cooking. Dylan certainly is over there doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, I've really I try to get a list out every Sunday if I can. So I've basically set my schedule up perfectly to where as long as nothing happens in my life and everything goes the way it's supposed to, I can usually sit down like between Thursday and Sunday and get one of these written. The hardest part of my week is basically right now, other than managing all the other channel stuff with Luke and us trying to figure out what we're gonna do, and like taking turns on roles and stuff. It's a lot of, all right, which one of these is going to be like the one this week? What do I feel like tackling? And yeah, right now I've circled it up. I've been saying it for a while. I put a poll out there because I didn't know if people even wanted this anymore, but I am going to be doing a body horror list this week, all in reference to The Substance. So if you liked The Substance, I will have 5 films that you should watch. If you enjoyed that film, that'll probably make your list of body horror films if you don't know about them. I've looked for some deep cuts. I've got one that I've got to check out before I finalize it, and I'll be watching that tomorrow, so I'm excited. And oh, Luke, we forgot. Our good friends over at Shout Factory Scream Factory just sent us Hush on 4K.
Oh,
so
very nice.
This comes out on the 26th for everybody, so we will have a review of this up soon. So we have not talked about it, and it's something Luke and I really enjoy, so we're excited to dive into it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic movie right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Another good slasher, another really interesting take on like the home invasion slasher subgenre. So
yeah, it gives you that very like real feel kind of thing. You know, it just feels so grounded. I love that. And also just a little bit of a different tilt. Sometimes it's the most simple creative ideas that just unlock something brand new.
The entire dynamic of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Like the versatility of the horror space. Like we were talking about Thanksgiving, Terrifier, all this stuff. I think Hush is something where you really see that, where you get to see something that you don't even think about until it's gone, and then how big of a part it is in the story itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's got this survival element. I mean, it's just, yeah. I would imagine everyone in the chat seen Hush. If you guys haven't seen it, you got to check it out. It's one of the reasons why everyone loves Mike Flanagan and wants him to direct every single horror movie, or at least every horror reimagining that comes down the pike. So yeah, guys, links in the description below so you guys can follow the Splattercast guys on YouTube and on their socials as well. Weekly videos. You guys go live usually once a week. You guys go live with Evan, or is that every other week?
A bi-weekly thing. It's our combined show between 3 channels. It is us, Evan from Rockland Graves, and Alex King from Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. We just kind of mixed it all. It's called Beyond the Splattered Graves. So yeah, we do that, and it's a buttload of fun. It's usually it started out as just like a bi-weekly news show. We just talk about that, but we have just had a string of guests that have just been awesome. And Davey, I guess I can say it now. You are on my list of people that I would love to extend an invite to. So if you're ever free on a Monday evening, I'd love to have you on. So we're just trying to get interesting content creators in the horror space. I mean, we reach out to a lot of people, and we're just trying to kind of just share the wealth a little bit and get in there and just say, hey, like, let's talk about fucking horror movies. Like, I think that's the best part about the horror community is everybody's so like welcoming and cool. It's very different than like a lot of online spaces I've ever been a part of, where it's like, you know, it seems like so much like animosity and drama builds up, but like here it's literally just like the way you opened up our conversation by just saying, hey, one of us was going to extend the invite at some point. How's it going? Like, I knew it. Like, I mean, I said to Luke, I was like, we got to talk to Davey at some point here, dude. Like, we keep popping up in each other's, our friends' chats and stuff. I'm like, we got to do it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I love the community here. All of the creators I've met have been really sweet. You know, regardless of sub count, everyone's been very accommodating and really, really cool, which is Super awesome to see. I come from the musical world. Like I played in bands for years and years, and it's totally different in that part of like show business where people are a lot more protective and a lot more like, you know, they don't want to extend, maybe not like a helping hand, but the collaborative efforts aren't as great as they are here in the horror YouTube sphere. And of course, all the amazing people that hang out in the chats all over the place. I mean, that's what's really cool is you can go live and you can talk about news. You can go on a tangent for 10 or 15 minutes. That might end up becoming the meat of the discussion. Like, you know, we could have just talked about Star Wars forever and Luke would have sat there and been like, what the hell are these guys doing? But that's the fun thing about yeah, so thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you for hopping on and spending some time with us here on Late Night with the Davey. I'm so pumped to see that your guys' success like continues to rise and just gets exponentially greater and greater. Guys, if you're not subbed already, what the heck are you doing? Get on over there. At least give them some views and see if it's for you. I would imagine that if you're hanging out here, that it very much is. And yeah, guys, really looking forward to seeing what you have for the rest of the year. And we'll chat offline and put together a time for me to crash your party over there.
Absolutely, man, for sure. And of course, I was going to say this a little earlier, but I forgot. When Thanksgiving 2 comes out, we also do a thing where we put together spoiler panels for movies. Last one was Terrifier 3. And I'd love if Davey, if you could be one of our special guests for that for Thanksgiving 2. We're going to talk about spoilers, talk the whole movie the Sunday after it comes out. So.
Hell yeah. I am so down. Yes. Book it right now. We'll book it right now.
I'll make the thumbnail tomorrow. Let's do it.
Oh, it'll be the longest. It'll have so many people waiting. Thank you guys so much again. Really appreciate you. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk soon.